Master of Neuroscience at the University of Lethbridge, and she graduated with 3 degrees from the U of L, a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry in 1977, a Master of Science in Neuroscience in 2001, and a PhD in Neuroscience in 2004. So welcome, Robin.
Thanks, Brad. It's a delight to be here.
It's great to have you, and the title for today's show is The Forgotten Parent. So first of all, I'm going to ask you, Robin, what is the name and age of your children?
I have 2. My oldest is Jeff, and he's 40. And my youngest is Kirsty, and she's 39.
Okay. Christy. And I think I did meet Jeff once. He was helping out at a conference we're at, and helping out with
all the technical stuff.
The IT stuff. He's pretty good at that.
Yes.
And a few grandchildren, I understand?
I have 7 grandchildren, ages from 15 to 6. Oh, wow. She just had a birthday.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good. Well, what would you say is your favorite part of being a parent?
My favorite part of being a parent was actually interacting with my kids. So we lived in a small town, and there wasn't much to do, and so we had lots of time to be with each other and play. We didn't have a television, so we had to talk. Yeah. And we did a lot of that, and sing and play. Yeah. So that was fun for me. And then I went back to school when my kids started school. So I started work actually, and then so
awesome.
All that early time I had with them, it was precious.
Cool. Yeah. What would you say is the best part of being a grandparent?
Oh my gosh. Now that I know how brains develop and the things that you can do to have a positive impact on brain development, I feel I've been given a second chance to get it right. I think we did okay, but we could have done a lot better if we'd just known that little things can make a huge difference for children.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that a lot of parents can say that that they wish they would have done more of the stuff that they're doing now sooner, or maybe as grandparents too, that that this is great, now I have a second chance, like you said, to make an impact.
Well, one thing I do know, it's not worth beating yourself up or feeling guilty about things that didn't happen, because there's plenty you can do now that will make a difference for your children.
Absolutely.
Still.
Absolutely, yes, definitely. So the title, as I mentioned, for today's show is The Forgotten Parent. So I want to ask you, Robin, what do you mean by dads being the forgotten parent?
Well, I have to say it kind of irks me that when you go to medical centers, it's called the Institute for Maternal and Infant Health. They have all kinds of things aimed at mother and child. A lot of institutes called the Mother-Child Institute. And I get that mom and children work together, but there's another person involved, and that's dads. And I really feel that they have been underserved and underappreciated. And so, I've been doing a lot of research on fathers, and honestly, I think if the public was aware of how big an impact dads have on their kids, things would change. And we'd stop making these institutes exclusive for mother and children. We would include the entire parental group.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's so powerful. I appreciate you saying those words. And that's what this show is all about, Robin. So I do want to ask you, follow up to that then, is you were mentioning that if society knew the powerful impact that dads have on their children's lives, how does dad's level of engagement impact your child's development?
Okay, in the postnatal period, we know that the more father does custodial care of his baby, that means diapering and bathing and holding, the better their brain development is. So they actually show accelerated brain development and maturity, and they're better. They have more friends, they're able to make relationships better, and they do better academically. So having fathers involved right from the get-go is not just good for brain development early in the baby, but it also bonds baby to father and father to baby. And so even if the marriage breaks down or something comes up in the family, that father is always going to be aligned with his baby.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It is cool. It is cool.
Yeah, so postnatally, there's a lot of impacts, positive impacts that engaged and involved fathers can have on their child's development.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was stunned to find out that it's father's language that predicts baby's language, not mother's. And so when I first heard that, I thought that can't be right, because I have 3 degrees and I have a different way of speaking than my husband, who is well educated, but he's a heavy duty carpenter. So he worked on those big job sites where there's a lot of language that is colorful. And when I learned that he had a bigger impact on our children's language development, this was when they were already grown. I thought, oh Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a stunner.
That's really impressive, and I've heard that research too. Could you speak a little bit more about that, about how dad's language has a bigger impact on
Well,
child?
it almost seems, and I don't know if other mothers would agree with me, but it almost seems to me that when I speak, my kids it's optional whether they're going to listen or not, but when their dad speaks, they definitely listen.
Yes.
And so it could very well be just getting used to, oh, it's mom again.
Right.
Probably not that important because she talks a lot. Or it's dad, and I better listen to this because he doesn't say that much.
For sure, and that's great, because what I've heard too is that even in the hospital, as in newborns, they respond differently to dad's voice as with mom's voice. Mom's voice, they're more likely to feel settled and calm, whereas dad's voice, they're more likely to be stimulated.
It's exciting because they're more used to mom. They're with her for all of those 9 months, so they're used to the sounds of her voice.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And how would you say that, how can the lifestyle choices of dads, even before they have kids, or teen boys before they have kids, how can that impact, or how does that have an impact on child's development?
Oh my gosh. For the longest time, people have studied maternal health while pregnant and the influence that has on babies. And for a very long time, people didn't really feel it had that big an impact. And that's sort of where I started my research, looking at pregnancy and how things that happen during pregnancy impact brain development in offspring. But then I thought, well, honestly, they have a dad too. What about what he was doing in the preconception period? Does that have the potential to change offspring brain development? And when we started doing this work, honestly, I really did not believe it was going to work. So we sort of did it with this thought in mind, well, it's just a trial. We won't go anywhere with this. The very first experiment we did was on father stress in a rodent model, and the effects were so profound throughout the lifespan of the offspring. I became completely sold on the idea that fathers have a way bigger impact than we have ever given them credit for. And so we've tried everything from soup to nuts now, nicotine, we've had exposure to alcohol. We've also had positive experiences like tactile stimulation, which would be like massage. We've done enrichment, where they're put in an enriched housing enclosure. Those positive experiences have positive effects on their offspring brain development. The negative experiences have profoundly negative effects on offspring brain development. And so it looks to me that fathers being kept out of the picture as far as the medical profession goes, not being acknowledged as far as a lot of societal things go, has been a real mistake. We need to remind them of how important they are, and particularly lifestyle choices before they conceive. And then, it turns out, also in the adolescent period. So adolescent boys are known for not really making great decisions. and if any period in life, you're going to be more compelled to try something that may not be as good for you as you would think, or as you would predict as you get older. Teenagers are more likely to take those risks. And so we've learned that the adolescent period in males is profoundly making a difference for the genetic or epigenetic changes on the sperm that carry a message to the babies even many years later. And so it probably because the machinery that makes the sperm are just up and running, and they're very sensitive to environmental exposures. And so things like using a lot of alcohol in those early years, there seems to be a residual message that shows up many years later when you decide to have children.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is. It's kind of scary, but I think people need to know.
Yeah, you need to know that.
That you're not just making these decisions for yourself and like, oh, if any harm comes to me, at least I'm not hurting anyone else. You don't know when you're 13, 14, 15 what the future holds as far as a family and children go for you. So it would be really nice if boys knew that they have a huge effect.
Wow, that's really powerful.
We've recently done experiments in the preconception period in females. Same experiences exactly, and males have a much bigger effect.
Oh, wow.
So everyone predicts it's going to be the mother that has the biggest effect. It is not.
Yeah, and that changed everything, because that puts a lot less pressure on females, on women and girls.
Absolutely. I feel it's freeing.
Yeah, it is. And there's a lot less responsibility, less pressure on the women and the moms to do the best. Because I think moms already have way too much pressure. And more pressure on dads or men or boys who are maybe thinking about having children. Like that's...
Right, and I think society's gotten used to the idea of if a child is having behavioral issues, what's wrong with mom? What's
Right.
going on there?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's that's not the case.
Yeah.
And it's not the case that there's anything wrong with the child or the mom,
Right. Yeah.
but you know,
Yeah.
behavioral issues in and of themselves will
Yeah.
get a lot of people
Yeah.
thinking there's something going wrong.
And a lot of, I think, moms may personalize that it's their fault, or
yeah.
if the child's not doing well in school, or for whatever reason, or just behaviorally, or even biologically, it's not going well, and take
Yeah.
on that pressure.
I do believe that's true. For instance, for the longest time, if you were over 35 and going to have a child, you were counseled that you're an older female and likely to have more problems genetically
Right.
with mutations, more incidence of trisomy.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so
Right.
that sort of thing, a Down
Yeah.
syndrome,
Yeah.
and what we know now is fathers who are getting older pass on just as many and maybe more mutations, and so there's a strong link for a higher incidence of autism with older fathers,
Right.
higher incidence of schizophrenia, higher incidence of ADHD, because those sperm actually age too, and they
Yeah.
don't get put together in
Yeah.
exactly the same
Yeah.
way as when you were younger.
Right.
So
No, I think that's great, because for as long as you can remember, women have had this biological clock on their idea. Okay, I got to get married, I got to have kids.
Yeah.
But now the pressure is also on dads too, on men.
I think
that
so.
They need to do this within a certain period.
Well, and I think what kind of why I'm kind of shocked that the medical community hasn't done more with this information, because it's been out for a while now that fathers have this huge impact, and yet I haven't seen the kind of transformation that I think needs to happen. So fathers are truly involved in the process right from the beginning.
Right.
Yeah, so I would like to see preconception classes offered to
Yes.
parents who are thinking of having kids,
Ah.
so they could start to think about things that they might want to change. Because
Right.
there is washout with sperm. Every 60 days or so, you make a whole new set. So
Yeah.
so over a period of months, if you're using a lot of alcohol, you can wash some of that out.
Yeah.
But we have done some experiments in the lab that shows it doesn't totally go away. So it doesn't totally reset,
yeah.
but nonetheless, it's much better
Yeah.
than if you've continued to use
It's
right up until the
maybe a
time you
lower
conceive.
risk kind
Lower
of-
risk, yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating, and I totally agree with you with preconception programs, educational, because we have premarital counseling, we have premarital programs, but to have preconception, like something you take before you have kids, I mean, I've heard from so many parents that would be so helpful, right? And I mean, we're still doing parenting after separation at Family Center, which is what parents who are having a divorce with kids under the age of 16 have to take a course. It is done online now, but we also offer it face-to-face as well. But we've heard feedback from so many people who've taken that they wish they would have had this education before they had kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There are so many things you can learn as a parent before you get into that role. I remember many, many years ago, before my son was born, I took a parenting course, and everyone I knew thought I was a nut because, it's just natural.
Yeah.
Why do you have to take a course? Everybody does it.
Yeah, yeah.
And they thought, oh, you're such a schoolie. You have to go to school for everything. And it turns out that maybe I wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
That there are things
Yeah.
you can learn
Absolutely.
about techniques for parenting that are very
Yeah.
positive as far as your child development goes.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, so true. And I just want to take just a short time just to remind you that we are on Jess FM, live on jessfm.ca. You can please follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And I just want to also make a quick note that on our Instagram, sorry, I'm not quite up to speed on social media, but Instagram on #SuperDadsYQL, please put up a picture of an activity that you did with your kids that helped build their brains. Okay, so this could be like reading a book to them, playing peekaboo, rough and tumble play. It could be making a puzzle, that sort of thing. And we do have a few pictures on there. Myself, I put up a picture of me teaching my son Rhett how to bowl. And Robin has thankfully put on a couple pictures as well. Did you want to explain what they are?
Yeah, I sent a picture to Brad because I don't do social media at all of my husband teaching. My husband Bill was teaching our granddaughter how to ride her bike, and that was just recent last summer. And when I came across that picture, I thought, wow, this is such a wonderful example of how you can make a profound difference for a child by giving them that all of your attention. He's willing to run after her while she's on her bike bike to make sure she feels confident that she won't suffer a crash. And that's something that Grandma isn't so willing. That's why I was taking the picture. The other picture that we posted was a picture of my colleague, Dr. Claudia Gonzalez, who's in the kinesiology department. And Claudia and I do a lot of work together. And she's very interested in motor function, and I'm very interested in the cognitive end of things. And we've learned that motor function actually predicts cognitive function.
Right.
And so we have learned through our research that children who do more things with their right hand, like pointing or grasping objects, have better language development, have better cognitive function later on, things like executive function. And so she was working with her niece who was not decided as far as her hand use went. And if you see that picture, you'll notice that they're pointing with their right hand. And in that case, when the child is pointing with the right hand, she gets social encouragement, like, good job, that sort of thing. And when she points with her left hand, we fail to encourage that. And as a result of that, soon you see a child pointing with their right hand more. And we know that that helps develop the hemisphere in which language is found. So we have this wonderful brain lateralization, so we can have specialization for certain functions. Language is one of them, and so is right hand use, and they happen to map into the same part of the brain.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And before the show, Robin and I were having discussions about left-handed, right-handed, and whenever this conversation comes up, because I'm left-handed, I feel like I'm not quite maybe as good as right-handers, but I know that's not really the case. But,
no, not at all. And I know as soon as you say right-handed, people get defensive because there's a lot of left-handers in the world. About 30% of the human population is left-handed. But it turns out that most left-handers use their right hand the same way that right-handed people do. And so we're talking about the majority of the population. More than 90% would engage that way. There are a few who have language in the right hemisphere, and for those individuals, then pointing with the left hand would be the right thing to do, grasping objects with the left hand, because then you're supporting language development on the appropriate side of the brain.
Right. Yeah. And that was just a joke. I know that for me, most of the things I do are with my right hand, but just writing is with my left. So just a little bit different. So again, that's hashtag SuperDadsYQL on Instagram. Please put up a picture of an activity you did with your children that promotes positive brain development. So I want to kind of go back a little bit to what we were talking about there, Robin, with lifestyle choices for teen boys, for men, for dads. First of all, I want to ask you if there's a message maybe you could give to the teen boys out there, to the dads, to the men out there, and also for the parents of teen boys.
Right. Well, I know it's hard to believe that as a teenager you could be making decisions that can have an impact 10 or 15 years later in your life. But I think it's important to be aware that because at that time in your life your hormone levels are really high, your brain is changing rapidly, as is your body, and as a result of that you're making the machinery that's going to make the sperm that will eventually make your children. And that machinery can encode environmental messages. So if it's alcohol you're exposing your brain to or your body to, it can encode those messages in the machinery that makes the sperm, and the message can continue to be shared with future children for many, many years. So it looks like there's two hot spots of time for men as far as their lifestyle choices go. One is right before conception, and one is in the adolescent period. The rest of, you get a pass for early life and you get a pass for early adulthood, it seems like, if you don't have children right away. But of course, if you are indulging in things that you know are probably less than beneficial for your own health, they likely have a negative impact or potential negative impact on future children. But there are things, as I said, that you can do that have a very positive impact. And so let's not forget that you can actually be making choices that will have a potentially profoundly positive impact on your child's brain development, and that's the good news message.
And what are those? What are the examples of those?
Okay, so an example of a positive experience, we put our male rats in what we call a rat condo, and that's an enriched housing environment where they have lots of exposure to other animals and toys and different foods and exciting games, and so almost they can chase each other around and climb up ramps and do things that are quite different from their typical environment in a shoebox cage. And when we do that with fathers, the methylation patterns completely change in their babies' brains in ways that allow more of the genetic messages to be transcribed, and you get more of the positive proteins being expressed that are associated with better brain health. We see more white matter in the brains of offspring whose fathers have had tactile stimulation pre-conception. So this is like giving a massage to a dad and doing that throughout the period before they conceive. And we typically go about a month before conception. And that massage had made a difference in the offspring. They had more connections in their brain very early in life than an animal whose father didn't have that kind of an experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, I mean, the powerful message there is for teen boys, for men, for dads, even before you start to think about having children, that the experiences you have, the decisions you make, whether they're positive or negative, can have definitely an impact on future development.
Oh, absolutely.
And I guess the message for teen boys out there as well is that the lifestyle choices you make can have definitely an impact on the rest of your life, including if you choose to have children.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think paying it forward. You can pay it forward by making good choices. So if you think of it that way, by engaging in exciting opportunities, doing committed work for your school or your community, those kinds of things, you're going to pay forward to your future children.
Absolutely.
And so I know youth have a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And if you invested in ways that are positive for you, you're also going to make a positive impact on your future children.
For sure. And then I did want to just talk briefly about, you did mention that society needs to change. There needs to be some changes when it comes to promoting fatherhood and the forgotten parent, right? And remembering that they're an important parent, an important part of raising children. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that, because what I noticed with my two children, they're 8 and 3. So when I had my first son, Shay, I noticed that when we're in the hospital that I felt like I was a caddy. I wasn't really an involved, like I wasn't an important member of the family unit. It was mostly just supporting mom. And then when I had Rhett, when he's 3 now, so this is just 2016, I appreciate that it seemed like I was honored more as it was a little bit of progress. So I wasn't just a caddy. They did address me a few times, like nurses would call me dad, can you please do this, that kind of thing. And I appreciated that.
Being included in even those minor ways.
Yeah, exactly. So I did notice a bit of progress with that. And obviously, because I work with this in my job at Family Center, I do see dads stepping up more, obviously be more involved, wanting to be more involved in their children's lives. But is there anything else you wanted to say about how society needs to change in different areas?
Absolutely. I really think that if it came from the medical profession, where everybody has a doctor, everybody pays attention to what their doctor says, for the most part, if you want better health, right? I do believe that if the messages started trickling down from the health end of things, when your wife has her first appointment when she's pregnant, if you get involved in the conversation and not just sit in the corner like some lost soul who's supposed to be there supporting her, they should be asking you questions too. And this would be an appropriate time to find out what's happened in your life. Preconception wise, do you plan on being involved with the baby a lot? Are you able to do that? Do you have the opportunity for parental leave? Is that something you've considered? We know that moms who choose to breastfeed, if the father is on board, will breastfeed much longer and be much happier about it than if the dad doesn't care or hasn't made a committed choice with the mom.
Right. Or just wants them to do it too quickly or not do it
or
enough.
come on, isn't that enough of that? Can't we move on? That sort of thing. But you have to have these conversations and understand what the impacts are going to be on your baby, because now they recommend at least 6 months, and if you can go to beyond a year, things are going to be much better as far as your child's brain development goes, based on the nutrients that are in that breast milk and based on that loving touch that baby naturally gets when they're in mom's arms. And the same thing can happen with dads.
Absolutely.
So if you're not breastfeeding, dads can be a major part of the feeding equation. You
Yeah.
should be stripping down,
Yeah.
holding
Skin to
baby,
skin.
skin
Yeah.
to skin,
Yeah.
holding the bottle, talking and cooing to baby, as moms typically do.
Yeah.
All of that kind of thing is going to build brains right from the beginning.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
I think it actually, if fathers were aware that they can be an active brain builder right
Yeah.
from the beginning,
Yeah.
that things would be different and
Yeah.
very positive for
Yeah.
their children.
And I would add to that that moms and dads are as a team and they're involved in this together. Right when they're before they're pregnant and while the mom's pregnant, and going to those appointments like for ultrasounds. And if there are professionals that you're working with who are saying, oh, it's just for the mom, because I have heard of this even recently, that in one case I've heard about that dads were not allowed to be in the ultrasound room. Then moms and dads need to work together and set boundaries and say, no, this is us, we're in this together.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And we do know that the more you spend time looking at that little person developing, and the more time you spend rubbing tummies and talking to the baby as though it's already here, even in the prenatal period, the better the bonding is for both
Yeah.
mom and dad. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's
Yeah.
what we strive for,
Yeah.
strong, healthy attachments
Yeah.
with nurturing parents.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Right. Great. This is a great conversation. I really appreciate having you on here, Robin.
It's my pleasure.
And very powerful message about how we need to make the forgotten parent, the parent that's there, the parent that both parents are there, right?
That both parents are there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to one more question for you, because I know you're doing a lot of involvement in the community and trying to get these messages out there. Where can people find you?
Well, we do have a website. It's called buildingbrains.ca. And there's lots of activities for engaged parenting on there. So we encourage play and play in the earliest years before the children start school, as we're trying to be sure that they have all of the requisite skills to be successful in kindergarten by the time they get there.
Yeah.
So there's that. I also do a number of community talks. So you can get a hold of me just through the university, though. gib@uleth.ca.
Okay, awesome. Well, I really appreciate again you being on my show, Robin, and thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for paying attention. Thank you for checking us out at jessfm.ca. Remember to follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and for sharing this powerful message with us. Thanks again, Robin, and check it with us. We'll be back in 2 weeks. 2 weeks on Fridays, 10:30 a.m. for Super Dads. And hope everybody has a good weekend, and take care.